Well, it got worse. It did. The United States had won every CONCACAF Nations League that had ever happened, managed to lose against Panama, and then managed to lose against Canada. Now, I have detailed to you the CONCACAF circle of suck that exists, and it is real. I don't want to pretend that this circle of suck is not real, but it's very real. Right? The U.S. always loses to Canada. Canada always loses to Mexico. Mexico always loses to the U.S. This is basically how it's worked, not since the beginning of time, but definitely over the last 4 or 5 years. The U.S. went out and lost to Canada again, meaning the U.S. finishes dead last out of the 4 teams that went into the Nations League this window, 4th out of 4 teams, and full of despair and sadness. And that is cause for serious amounts of reflection, because going into this Nations League, I would have been very disappointed with anything other than actually winning the entire thing. Obviously, that is the expectation. It's the freaking United States. Mexico's national team is down. They squeaked a Nations League title on a 92nd minute penalty for a handball to win over Panama, but I can't really make fun of that too much because the United States can't beat Panama to save its life. Right, the United States, if the fate of the world was at stake, the United States would lose to Panama. We would all get snapped out of existence by some Panamanian Canaleros Thanos who would just yeet us all into the freaking stratosphere or something. The United States has a problem. Right, I mean, I guess the United States has a lot of problems. The U.S. national team has a problem on the men's side. You got to make sure I'm specific enough. And we can't ignore that problem anymore. It was a problem that was apparent under Greg Berhalter, and it is a problem that is apparent under Mauricio Pochettino. It is a problem that since this generation of players has come to the fore with the United States, a problem that has been there. There are no killers on this team. None. They don't exist. I don't know why. It doesn't work. There is a movie called Cool Runnings. You may have seen it, you may not have seen it. It's about the Jamaican bobsled team. Okay, and if you were wondering, if Jamaica does have a bobsled team, the first Jamaican bobsled team was obviously a big barrier-breaking enterprise. And the movie it's kind of a comedy, right? But it's about, it's an actual biopic of the Jamaican bobsled team. Jamaica, we have a bobsled team. And there's a point where they're learning how to bobsled, right? And they're trying to emulate other great teams, right? They have the talent. They make it to the Olympic qualifying, and they're doing their first run or whatever at the Olympic qualifying. And the lead guy, the driver of the sled, he goes to the rest of the team. And he goes, well, the best in the world are the Swiss. So we're going to copy the Swiss. So they get up there and they go, eins, zwei, drei, right? 1, 2, 3 in German. And then they launch the sled. But it doesn't feel like them. It doesn't work. Right? They try to copy this great bobsled team, and it doesn't work. And I now feel like the United States national team is in that phase. We're in that phase of our national team development. We're good enough to get to the Olympic trials now. We're on the dance floor. Now we're exposed to all the other best teams in the world day in and day out, week in and week out. All of our top players are playing against all these other top teams. And then we bring it home and we try to be them. And we're fucking not. Right? We're trying to eins, zwei, try and push the damn sled down and try and be better than Switzerland. We're not going to be better than Switzerland. The same way that the Jamaican bobsled team is not going to be better than Switzerland. Doing eins, zwei, drei. Sorry. And then, of course, later on in the movie, it's a feel-good movie, and that's just the way that it happened, is they came up with like a little jingle, right? Something that resonated with Jamaican culture, something that they were proud of, that made them feel like we are Jamaican bobsledders. I don't know if I can remember it. I've seen the movie a lot, but it's like, feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme, get on up, it's bobsled time. And then they would go, right? Because you have to have something that times up like your rocking of the sled. I don't know. I'm not a bobsled expert. But the United States is trying to do the Swiss thing. The United States is trying to be Spain, England, France, Germany, Italy. We're not. We never will be. Even if MLS becomes one of the best leagues in the world, even if we are able to develop more and more players through academies and whatever, and all of a sudden there's going to be somebody that's competing, getting Ballon d'Or votes who's American. It's not like Pulisic's that far away from that right now, but you get the idea, that next step where we go from where we are now to maybe like a poor man's Netherlands or something in terms of the number of American players that have proliferated throughout Europe, right? And playing in major leagues and being able to kind of play all over. Even if we get there, we'll never be the same. And that's fine. Because the U.S. has a good sporting culture. It's just different. The U.S. has its own sporting culture. We have a ton of sports, obviously, but there is like an ethos. There is an underlying sporting culture, right? It is, it's dogged. It's determined. It's shit talking. It's you don't know where I'm from, dog. Clint Dempsey embodied it, right? The guys on that old U.S. national team that was way less talented, they fucking embodied it. Kyle Beckerman would clean out Lionel Messi. He'd get in his face. They would fucking try. And it's not like the guys on the national team now aren't trying. But I'm just taking a shot in the dark here, but it is clear that something is broken. The U.S. national team is less than the sum of its parts. And the best national teams, whether it be Spain, whether it be France, whether it be a Croatia, or like a Greece making the World Cup knockouts, they are better than the sum of their parts. They take all the parts together, they infuse it with some national pride and some, sporting identity. They play like they are from their country. That's what's so cool about international sports to begin with. Right? That's why it's so cool that when you're playing freaking Paraguay, they're shooting from 35 yards away. When you're playing Brazil, they're trying tricks all over the places. And when you're playing the United States, you're playing a bunch of dogs. Because that's just how that's how U.S. sports goes. You beat somebody and you tell them about it. You dunk on them and you give them a little and your mom. It is an overly macho, overly nuts in your face kind of sporting culture. I played 5 sports in high school. Every single one of them was like that. Right? It's just, you're playing pickup basketball in the streets of New York. I played basketball my entire life. It's like that. You're talking shit. You're in their face. You're grinding it out. It's tough. The U.S. made the World Cup quarterfinals in 2002. The United States made the World Cup knockouts in 2010 and 2014 with teams that aren't nearly as good as the team that the United States has right now. But this isn't a team that makes me feel like I'm watching a U.S. national team. I'm excited for how talented this team is. I am. But it doesn't feel like ours, right? And I could be reaching. I could be wrong. That's the whole point of me just sitting here ranting and rambling about random stuff. I could not be right. But you can't tell me this is right either. You can't get way more talented as a team and do this. I know Canada's gotten better. I'm not saying they haven't. Canada is as good as anybody else in CONCACAF right now, particularly because they're more than the sum of their parts. And all I can think of is you're watching Canada. I remember they beat Mexico in World Cup qualifying. They score, and they're diving into snowbanks. They're picking up the snow and rubbing it on their arms. They're leaning into, we're Canadian and we're good at soccer. And this is what we're doing. And the United States, as weird as it may sound, does have a footballing culture and a footballing tradition. This is not the first time the United States has ever emerged as a footballing nation, because the United States has made more World Cup knockouts than the vast majority of countries on the face of the earth. And they did it a certain way. Now, you can be more talented and play that way, but I need, what I think, at least, the United States needs, is to take all of this talent and play like freaking Americans playing sports. Make it nasty. Make it a bunch of shit talking. Make it down in the mud. Make it tough. Rip some jerseys. Get stuck in. You go watch highlights from the 2002 team, right? Just out physical them, out tough them, and play like it's your last night on earth. Play like it's the last match you're ever going to play. Because that's how those guys played. And it fucking worked. And it made people that don't watch soccer until the World Cup. They only watch it every 4 years. They don't even understand the offside rule. It made people love those teams. It made me and a lot of other people fall in love with watching the U.S. national team because even though Ghana had the ball 75% of the time, I thought we had a chance. They didn't roll over. They didn't just try and do what the other team was doing, but worse. The point of being a national team at the end of the day is to be the best of what your country can put out there on the field. The United States isn't doing that right now, and this is my theory as to why. I'm just hoping Mauricio Pochettino and the guys in the field can figure it out. Whether I'm right or not, there's got to be something to figure out because this is not good enough. It's the opposite. This is the cherry on top of the embarrassment sundae to go out there and do this again. There is one tournament between us and the World Cup. It's the Gold Cup. I'm going to be really sad if I don't see any sort of kick in the ass from this into that. At this point, I will be.